Hello and welcome to the Two Gals and a Mic podcast. I'm your host, Sue Kerver, and over the past year, I've interviewed 50 amazing women who are doing extraordinary things. Today marks the final episode of the Two Gals and a Mic podcast, and we're flipping the script, and I'm handing the mic over to my very close friend, Donna Andreassi, who is going to host today's show. Now, Donna was my second guest ever back in season 1, and she shared her powerful insights into doing what it takes to achieve big goals, even if that means reworking a plan time and time again. Donna's an Air Force veteran, a powerlifting champion, a 2-time Spartan race finisher, and has a passion for mentoring others. Donna, thank you so much for being here and for being willing to host this finale.
I'm honored to be interviewing you. How amazing is that? So, I wanted to give our listeners a little background on Sue. She is a former Peace Corps member, Coast Guard veteran, teacher of women only fly fishing classes, federal employee with the Fish and Wildlife Service, advocate for trauma awareness, aspiring creator of a camp for female veterans dealing with trauma and their healing journey. So, to start off with, Sue, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what led you to join the Peace Corps?
Well, if I'm completely honest, I had a pretty tumultuous childhood. It was not all chocolate chip cookies and white picket fences. So I am one of 4 siblings and I fall right in the middle. I'm the oldest girl, but I'm third in line. And I was always the smart kid. So I was always the one that didn't get in trouble, maybe until high school. And then things got a little sideways, but excelled academically and couldn't in that really find my place. So I never fit in with the popular kids. I never fit in with the sports and athletic kids. And so when I got to high school, I found myself really gravitating towards drama and the theater. And that's where I started to find my niche. And I guess in some ways, maybe that's where I started to find my voice. And it's also where I started to take some risks and maybe not follow the straight and narrow path, not necessarily all in good ways, as some high school kids do. But I think that that's also when I was inspired to think about service and service to others in unique ways. And I remember seeing a commercial on TV about Peace Corps, and I was really intrigued about serving in another country in a way that could benefit and help people. So when I got to college, I structured my academics around what I thought that I needed to be accepted into the Peace Corps and to go overseas and teach. So I got a teaching degree. I actually got an English degree with a minor in teaching, thinking that that would set me up really well for the Peace Corps. And then I also minored in French because I wanted to go to French speaking Africa. And oddly enough, when I finally got my assignment, they did not send me to French speaking Africa. They sent me to East Africa, where I had to learn an entirely different language.
That's pretty brave of you at such a young age to go to a foreign country where you didn't even speak the language. How do you think that changed your trajectory from being in the Peace Corps to transitioning to the Coast Guard? How did you make that leap?
Well, I'll tell you, Donna, Peace Corps changed everything for me. I spent, it was actually less than 2 years. Normally, a Peace Corps service, at least the one that I was assigned to in Ethiopia, was supposed to be 2 years. But the country ended up going to war with a neighboring country. And so we were evacuated early, had to go through the whole out processing situation and then make our way home. And I did that through a very circuitous journey that had a lot of adventure, but that's another story. But I think it changed my perspectives on everything because I was living in a village where poverty was the norm, in a mud house by myself, which really was not standard for the people in my community. Many times, multiple families lived together or a family that had many children. I had no running water. I had a pit in the backyard for my bathroom. I had one light bulb that came on sporadically throughout the week to
Wow.
provide electricity. So, I was paying a young woman to go get water from the river so that I could boil that and take showers, put it through the filter and have clean water to drink. And there was a lot of difficult circumstances that I had to navigate. But I think what that experience taught me is it really wasn't about me. It was about community. It was about all of these people who became like my brothers and sisters, who looked after me, who cared for me. And that really solidified that I was put on this earth to be of service to the earth, to the planet, to others, to communities. And so when I got back to the States, I was shell shocked a bit, a little bit of culture shock, trying to just reacclimate. And I wasn't really sure what to do with myself. So I did what I knew and I went back into teaching, and I was teaching at a high school, fast forward a couple of years. And I had a student of mine who was talking about joining the Coast Guard. And I was very intrigued because at the time I was married to an individual who was a charter boat captain. And I was very interested in becoming a captain myself. And I expressed
Love it.
that, I expressed that interest to him. And what he said to me is, "You're not ready." But what I heard him say was, "You're not good enough." That narrative ignited a fire in me where I felt like I had to prove that I was good enough. And so when the student mentioned the Coast Guard, I became very intrigued because I was like, hey, maybe that's how I can be ready, how I can prove my worth, how I can do it. And that was it. I pursued it. And I was the oldest one in my boot camp class to go through at 27 years old.
Wow. Sounds like your experiences have really shaped the person you are today.
I think that that's a very fair statement. I think that without the fundamentals of the Peace Corps and really seeing how the rest of the world operates, I think without my experiences in the Coast Guard, where I had to wear multiple hats and do different things and show up in ways that were incredibly challenging and well outside of my comfort zone, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I also don't think that I would have that deep sense of gratitude that I have for this earth and for people and for the ability to be of service in ways that I can be of service.
Don't you think those things that stretch us out of our comfort zones are those things that help us to grow and be a better person?
Donna, I 100% think that those are the things that make us be a better person, but they're never the things that we want to go through
Of
because they're the
course not.
things that are hard, and they're the things that hurt, and they're the things where we wonder, why is it that I have to go through X, Y, Z? But I think if you can keep that perspective of understanding that it sounds so trite, but a growth opportunity, then sometimes it can make the hard things a little bit easier.
I would agree. So now let's transition from your military life into civilian life. What did that look like for you?
I'm laughing because that was a little, not even a little bit. That was a bit of a dumpster fire. Spending over a decade in military service, the culture of it really became part of my everyday narrative. So I had this built in family, I had this built in support system. And I think the hardest thing was in the service, I could take risks and I could take chances, but they were calculated and to a certain degree they were safe because there were so many processes and things in place to keep one safe that you felt like you weren't necessarily going to fall over the edge. You kind of had that safety net, right? The thing I
Mhm.
couldn't do though is I couldn't be fully authentic and I couldn't show up fully as myself in ways that I wanted to because I felt that I had to keep this barrier up of being very assertive, very strong, very dominating in order to be seen, heard, have a seat at the table, and continue to move up and advance in my career. So when I came over to the civilian side, learning how to be me fully and authentically was terrifying. And it was really unnerving because I no longer had that safety net where I could take risks and now I would be caught. If I took risks and I failed, I would fall flat on my face or worse. And so it was this weird tightrope of trying to figure out how to navigate in a world where I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a built in family anymore. I didn't know how to build those relationships because they're not inherent in the civilian world. You don't just show up at a job and all of a sudden have the same type of family that you have when you show up in a military unit and, everybody's knit together through operations and whatever else you're doing. So I'll be honest with you, Donna, I struggled. I struggled to find place, I struggled to find purpose, and I struggled to find my path. Even with my career, I didn't quite know what I should be doing or how to fit in.
But you've done that. What would you say helped you to navigate that and become the successful podcaster, federal employee, best friend of a lot of women that you are? You're making us see that we can do great things and that we aren't just ordinary. How did you get from there to here?
Remember how we just talked about having to go through the hard stuff and the things
Yeah,
that you don't
good.
want to navigate?
True, true.
Yeah. So in 2017, I had a breaking point, and I didn't know that that was going to be my breaking point sort of until it happened. But I think it had been building for years. So I got out of the service in 2012. I got recalled to active duty to take part in the presidential inauguration. So that was a limited amount of time, a couple of months back on active duty. And then from there, beginning in 2013, that was it. So between 2013 and 2017, I was trying to find my way. And as I was doing that, I'd long since divorced husband number one and ended up meeting husband number two. I got married, and 2017, I got divorced. And that shattered me for a number of reasons. But I think between the divorce, between trying to figure out the career path, between still not feeling like I fully had purpose and really not, again, knowing where I fit in or how I fit in and trying to show up for people, whether it was in the workplace or in relationships or in friendships, as someone who was not authentically me, it led to me breaking. So that was the beginning of my healing journey. And I think that that was when I realized I had no choice but to change. I had really hit my rock bottom. I was drinking excessively to the point of severe alcoholism. I was depressed. I had anxiety. I was suffering from PTSD. And I just didn't want to deal with any of that until I had to. So I asked for help, and help came in ways that I didn't necessarily want and also that I didn't necessarily expect, which are two very different things, right?
Yeah.
So I took the help and I started to do the work. And by doing the work, I mean, I started to implement different tools in my life that led me to adopting different lifestyles. I stopped drinking. So I've been sober since October of 2017. I started to slowly put up boundaries and explore what that looked like with not doing things that didn't necessarily feel good or serve me or make sense. I started to really think about the people whom I had in my life and who I was associating with, and if they were moving with me or if they were holding me back. I started to re-engage with exercise and mindfulness and gratitude and all of the things, right? All of the wellness practices. And Donna, it was hard. It was super hard because when you do
I
that
bet.
and when you take away the coping mechanisms, in my case, it was alcohol, then everything is raw and it's real and it's available for you to have to feel. And I just made the decision that I was going to walk into the dark cave and I was going to keep on walking. And at some point, there would have to be some light at the end of it. And that took about 6 years to walk through it.
So, since that 6 years, you have started speaking openly about what you've gone through. What motivated you to be so open in public and sharing your story?
Well, honestly, in 2020, I went through almost breakdown number two, but I recognized the signs. And I realized in that time that I felt very isolated and I felt very alone. And I felt like it was only me. It was only me feeling anxiety and depression and PTSD. And I felt so much shame and I felt stigmatized. And I felt like there is no way that someone who's supposed to be quote unquote high performing and a leader and in roles where you're supervising other people and all of these things should feel these ways. And so I felt broken and I felt unworthy and I felt like there was something so wrong with me that it could never get fixed. I had a couple of family members, a couple of very close friends, and those are people whom I relied on heavily, and they did speak truth, but they had never been in the military. They had never been through some of the experiences which really stayed with me and shaped who I was. And so I didn't have that group of people who could fully identify with my experience and have that shared experience with me. So to answer your question, I recognized that in sharing my story, there's power because it not only connects people, but I think it's also a powerful part of healing because then other people, other women feel like they're not alone and they don't have to do that healing by themselves. And I made a promise in 2020 as I was really going through the thick of it. And that's where the tides turned for me. That's where everything really started to come together and gel and I really started to heal. I made a promise that no woman would have to go through anything similar by herself if I had anything to do with it. And I knew that part of executing that promise was using my voice to help take the shame away from things that really should be normalized.
So that brings me to my next question. What advice would you give to someone who is hesitant to speak out about their own experiences? How would you encourage them to find their voice?
When you're looking to share your experience or share your story, you have to feel safe. Psychological safety is really important because if you don't establish that trust or feel that you have that safety, I think that it could lead to more trauma. So I think
Great.
that you have to be thoughtful about how you do it, where you do it, and with whom you do it. And so the first piece of advice would be establish the safety, establish the community, establish the network. And then the other thing that I would say is think about your why. And there's so many layers and complexities to why it's important to share your story. Like when I first started the podcast, I had this inkling or this gut feeling. It was very visceral that I needed to do it. And I hesitated. And Donna, it took me almost 4 years to actually launch. And the reason is because I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't have that safe space where I thought it would be okay to really open up the kimono and just, let it all out. And then a number of things happened and I realized I had to do it and I pushed through my own barrier of fear and I did it and I very quickly realized this is not about me. This is about 50 extraordinary women who all have stories. And almost, not all of them, but almost every single one of those women said to me, Sue, I don't have a story and I'm not sure people are going to care what I have to say. And I'll tell you, reactions, listenership, data points, it became much less about me and much more about creating the safe space, which I think we all need so that people can share their stories.
Well, I appreciate you making this a safe space. I've really enjoyed listening to all of your podcasts. So I want to go on to my next subject, which I think kind of has to do with your healing journey. How did you get involved in fly fishing and come to start teaching women only fly fishing classes?
It's funny when I started fly fishing, when I took it up, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that the trajectory would lead me to teaching women how to fly fish. But really, I started fly fishing because of an inkling. I talk a lot about these inklings or these like gut feelings that I get. And there was just something in me that felt like I needed to learn this sport of fly fishing. And I was living in Texas at the time. So I got connected with some of the groups in Texas. And one individual whom I found on the internet taught me super basics, like basics of casting and whatever, but nothing really in depth. Just, here's a rod, here's a reel, maybe here's a little bit on how to cast it. And I remember going down to an area in South Texas to do a saltwater weekend fly fishing trip with a group of women. And this group of women were so gracious and really wonderful. And Donna, I had no idea, no earthly idea, really, what I was doing. It was kind of a mess, but I had a great time. And they told me, hey, if you like this, you should really get involved with Casting for Recovery, which is an organization that offers weekend fly fishing retreats for breast cancer survivors. And so I did. I signed up to be a volunteer, which again is ridiculous because I had no idea what I was doing. And I went to one of these retreats as a river guide. And I remember being paired up with a woman on the river. And it took me probably no less than 30 minutes to tie on her fly so that she could fish. I know I'm laughing because that is ridiculous, but I mean, it was a mess, but I just knew that there was something about the community. There was something about being in nature, being in the river, the quiet, the stillness of it all that resonated deep with my soul. And I still couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew it was something I had to continue to pursue. And so I did. I continued to pursue it. I had since moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and I linked up with a veteran organization called Project Healing Waters. And they had meetings a couple of times a month where we would get together and we would tie flies. And sometimes we would go out and we would do fishing excursions together. And I loved it, sort of. The thing that was hard about that is that I was always the only woman. And I hated that because I always felt like it was up to me to
Yeah.
represent my gender well, and I didn't represent my gender well because I spent more time stuck in bushes and trees and, losing fish if I was even getting on fish than I was being successful. And I found that I was becoming more frustrated than healing through it. So I found that there was an opportunity, oddly enough, in 2020 to come to Montana for a
I
week.
think that's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It was an all women's fly fishing guide school. And I used my Montgomery GI Bill to go to this guide school because I thought, you know what? If I can go through something like this with all women, maybe it'll be a different experience. So maybe I should see what that's like. I feel like I need to caveat this. I had no idea, no earthly idea that I would end up moving to Montana, nor did I have any idea that I would end up teaching. I literally wanted to go do this to become a better fly fisherwoman. And so I did. And I went through a week with these wonderful instructors and this wonderful cohort of women who celebrated successes and lifted me up in my failures. And at the end, I felt really empowered and I felt emboldened and I felt like I had succeeded in an area where I wasn't sure I could. And that's when I recognized that that was a very powerful thing to come alongside women and to help them have that feeling that turned out to be so healing for me. And so, I mentioned my almost second breakdown. When I recognized that I was starting to have some of the same symptoms and concerns that I had had in 2017 when my whole world really did fall apart, I took a break. I took Family Medical Leave Act. I walked out of my job and I put myself on sabbatical. And I went to Austin, Texas to live with my sister for 4 months to seek help because I definitely needed some medical intervention. And while I was going through treatment for severe depression, I picked up my rod and reel and I went out to the Texas Hill Country probably 3 or 4 times a week and I fished by myself. There was a couple of times when I had some friends who came alongside and we had wonderful conversations, but for the most part, I fished by myself and it was powerful and it was healing and it was like this soothing balm that I really don't know if I even have words for, but it was such an important part of my healing journey. The other thing that I wanted to recognize is that when I was in Austin going through that, the project lead for Project Healing Waters in Charleston kept tabs on me and he kept in communication and he sent me boxes of fly tying material and made sure that I had what I needed to do what I needed to do. And that kindness and that community that I had not had before, I started to recognize that I had. And that was also a powerful part of my healing. So lots of things happened, Donna, and I ended up in Montana. And when I got to Montana, inklings, these glimmers of saying yes to things, even when they don't make sense, I launched this business to teach women how to fly fish and to incorporate conservation into it simply because I knew how powerful it could be.
You felt that if it could be so healing for you, it could also be healing for others.
I think healing was part of it, but I think the other part of it, which was so important, was that feeling of empowerment. And I had recognized that in my circles and in conversations that I had had with many, many women, a lot of women veterans in particular, they had big dreams, big aspirations, things that they wanted to do. And there was this barrier to entry, which kept them from moving forward. And that was fear. And I just kept thinking, if you can be successful in an area where you don't think you can be, like I was on the river, you can translate that to any area of life, to any aspect
I agree. You
of
can.
life. And that became part of the idea for why I wanted to teach. I wanted to bring women together. I wanted to do it in a way that gave them enough time to create community, to find their tribe, and to have incremental successes. So at the end, they did feel successful in places where they weren't sure that they could be successful, and then maybe translate that into something bigger.
Well, I like to say that I took your class. I was one of the first students in your class, and I will say that it has helped me to be more confident on the water and around men who are experts at fishing, or at least they like to think they are. I can say it definitely has given me confidence, and I've been able to hold my own in a boat on the river, which makes me so proud. Thank you, Sue.
Well, I know, Donna, and just recently you went on a trip and you were sending me pictures of the most beautiful fish, big, big fish, and I was so excited to see you because it wasn't about the fish. For me, seeing those pictures was about your face, your smile.
I'm sure. It was so fun. And it makes me feel proud that I can hold my own and catching fish with the rest of them. So thank you. One more question on the subject of fly fishing. Do you have a favorite success story or memorable moment from one of your fly fishing classes?
I don't think I can boil it down to just one because it's been this beautiful evolution. I am going into season 4 this year. I will say in every single class, and this is not scripted, this is just something that organically happens. The first night, I bring all the women together and we start the class with the what's your why? Why are you here? And the conversations are so interesting. Many women say, I love to go out with my partner, with my husband or whatever, but he does everything for me. And I just want to be able to feel empowered and do it by myself. For some women, there are deeper reasons. I just really want to know that I can get out there in nature and do something like this. And for some people, it's as simple as I just want to catch a fish and this looks fun. But it's a basic fly fishing curriculum. So the women who are coming through don't have a whole lot of knowledge or background for the most part in how all of this works. And I think the most beautiful thing and the thing that just keeps me coming back to it is seeing my cohorts grow together, seeing them experience success together from not knowing how to cast to casting beautifully and getting their loops. bringing in all the conservation elements, all of it from that first night to the last class where we're all out on the river and all the women are doing everything by themselves is the most gratifying thing.
I
I
think you
think
should write a book.
I'm going to actually, that's my 2025 goal is to write a book.
So that brings me to another dream that you have, and that is you have a dream of one day having a camp for female veterans and helping them through their healing journey. What drives you to have that dream?
I think a lot of the things that we've talked about, my own lived experiences of trying to navigate my healing journey and not even knowing where to start, not knowing what resources were out there, not knowing how to build a community and feeling like I had to do a lot of that stuff almost by myself really led me to understand that one of the basic principles for me is to help women find community and to help them be in community. And then the second basic principle, and I've already said it, is to take this shame away from trauma and from PTSD, from anxiety, from depression, from all of the things that come with trauma. And it's not just women veterans, and it's not just women, it is people. We are living the human experience, and with the human experience comes trauma. It just happens, and I think that some things lead to deeper wounds than others, but everybody has these wounds, and so I feel very passionate about creating that safe space that allows women to come together, to share, to experience success, to learn new skills, and to build a toolbox of things that they can use at different points that will help them not only continue to heal, but once they're far along in their healing journey, stay focused, stay confident, and then help others. And so when I think about this ranch or this camp or the retreats or whatever it may look like, I think about ones that I've been through. I think about elements of those that have been very successful and helpful to me on my own path. And I think about taking all of these elements and putting them together into some sort of week-long opportunity where women can come and just exhale and get what they need, whatever that looks like.
Sounds like an amazing idea. I would love to come when you get there.
And I don't know when that's gonna be. I mean, it's so funny, Donna. I feel like every time I feel like I'm moving in a linear direction, life offers something else and sort of pulls me in a direction I couldn't quite anticipate, which is fine.
And normal. I
Yeah.
think perfectly normal.
Yeah.
So, looking back, what do you think has been the most extraordinary thing about your journey?
I think the fact that I'm still here to talk about it is pretty extraordinary. There were many, many times when I wasn't sure that that was going to be my truth. And there were even more times where I didn't feel worthy enough and I felt way too broken to feel like it was important enough for me to keep going. But deeper than that is a fighter and someone who is so resilient and so damn stubborn and refuses to give up and give in. And I think that the most extraordinary part is that I've been able to get past those negatives, the negative narratives, the things that are just not truth. And I've been able to excavate the good and the truth and know that I am worthy. We are all worthy and we are all important. And there is purpose for all of us in this one beautiful life that we're given. And I have such an immense amount of gratitude to God and to all of the people who have come alongside me to help me through this journey so that I can sit here as a testament to say it was hard as fuck, but it was really worth it.
Well, I'm happy you're still here, and I appreciate you and everything that you've brought to Montana. And I know that you are going to continue to keep pushing forward towards your passions and goals. And I know if anybody can do it, you can.
It'll be interesting to see how 2025 unfolds. My big goal for 2025 is to take all of the lessons that I have learned from these 50 amazing women like yourself and put those into a book and publish that. And so
Wow.
that will be part of the website that I will include in the show notes. But I'm on socials.
LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, we can find you and follow your story there. I appreciate you giving me the honor of interviewing you on your last episode. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Sue.
Well, Donna, I appreciate you so much. And I remember that when you asked if you could do this several months ago, I had never really thought about having someone interview me. And I was like, well, if there's going to be somebody that does it, it needs to be Donna. So thank you for the great questions. And I know for stepping outside of your comfort zone to host this last episode. I'm really so grateful to you and ladies, to all of the women in this series who shared their hearts, who shared their talents, who shared their insights and their hard earned wisdom to connect and to inspire all of us. And listeners, I am so grateful to all of you. Thank you for tuning in. It honestly has been my sincere honor and my privilege to hold space for all of these extraordinary women and their stories on this Two Gals and a Mic podcast. So thank you for being part of this incredible project. And we'll see what 2025 has to bring. We'll see you then.